Are actually at a point soon where I think we can begin to have a conversation of what's really going on in the world and actually talk about facts and not engage in this, this hate monger accusation back and forth. That we are soon at a place to where we can talk about the real facts. And I think it's happening because things are getting worse. There's a lead story on the Blaze today. A man approached a group of people at a bus stop just outside of Detroit on Saturday, asked them if they were Muslims, according to the police. When two people answered that they were not, he pulled out a 3-inch folding knife and started viciously stabbing one of them. One of the victims suffered 5 stab wounds during the assault, while the other person was stabbed in the hand while he tried to stop the suspect. Both victims, reportedly in their 50s, were transported to the hospital, later released after treatment for non-life-threatening injuries. The guy that was arrested, 39-year-old Terrence Levon Thomas, they arrested him within minutes of the attack. The bystanders said that they were engaged in a conversation. He inquired about their faith. They said they were not Muslims, and he attacked them without provocation. He is charged with 2 counts of assault with intent to murder, 1 count of carrying a dangerous weapon, 1 count of possession of a controlled substance, all state charges. Thomas could face a state charge of ethnic intimidation as well, but county prosecutors are determining whether the hate crime will be added or not. He told the police officers he wasn't happy that they were not Muslims. So this is going to become more and more apparent, and unfortunately more and more occurrences of this kind of thing are going to be happening all around the world.
Is this the good news?
Yeah, but here's the good news. Okay. Here's the good news. Mm-hmm. I read The Atlantic this morning, and there is an article by I guess it's Graham Wood. How do you say it? Graham. He is the first journalist, especially from a left-leaning source, that will actually talk about the truth of what's really going on. This guy has done his own homework, and he has come to the same conclusions that, quite honestly, we were talking about when we were at CNN. And we have been, and most likely by The Atlantic, we have been pilloried for this, and we have tried to say it in every possible way that we could think of. We have tried to do it with all of the correct sources, but nobody would listen to us. Maybe people will listen to Graham, because this is the first journalist I have seen that has actually come to the correct conclusion on what ISIS really wants. He starts with, what is the Islamic State? Where did it come from? What are its intentions? The simplicity of these questions can be deceiving. Few Western leaders seem to know the answers. Let me just give you some of the highlights. We can gather that the state rejects peace as a matter of principle, that it hungers for genocide, that its religious views make it constitutionally incapable of certain types of change, even if that change might ensure its own survival, and that it considers itself a harbinger and the headline player in the imminent end of the world. When I read that, that's the 3rd paragraph. When I read the 3rd paragraph, I thought, wait a minute. Somebody's done their homework. Somebody is actually taking these people at their word. We have misunderstood the nature of the Islamic State. The Islamic State, known as the Islamic State of Iraq and al-Sham, ISIS, follows a distinct variety of Islam whose beliefs about the path to the Day of Judgment matter to its strategy. Now, this is something we've talked about for a long time, the 12th Imam. When you believe you are a warrior for the end times, O Allah, give me the strength to hasten the return of the promised one, you do everything you can to cause chaos and massive bloodshed. This is why they're making these movies on the beach, beheading 21 Christians on the beach, because they want everybody to see, come and get us. Come and get us. They're begging for the fight. They believe religiously that they must engage Rome. Now, who Rome is at this point most likely is us, although if I were in Istanbul, I would be concerned, because Istanbul is the former head of the Orthodox Christianity.
When it was Constantinople.
When it was Constantinople. So before it was Rome, it was Turkey. These guys are dealing with medieval ideas. So Istanbul is in trouble. Rome itself is in trouble. But all of Christianity is also in trouble. And we are the most Christian of all nations. Its rise to power is less like the triumph of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, more like the realization of the dystopian alternate reality in which David Koresh or Jim Jones survived to wield absolute power, not only a few hundred people, but in this case, over some 8 million people. We have misunderstood the nature of the Islamic State in two ways. First, we tend to see jihadism as monolithic and to apply the logic of al-Qaeda to an organization that has decisively eclipsed it. Remember, this is the JV team. The Islamic State supporters I spoke with still refer to Osama bin Laden as Sheikh Osama, a title of honor. But jihadism has evolved since al-Qaeda's heyday. Bin Laden viewed his terrorism as a prologue to a caliphate that he did not expect to see in his lifetime. This just kills me. I mean, how did people miss this? His organization was flexible, operating as a geographically diffuse network of autonomous cells. The Islamic State, by contrast, requires territory to remain legitimate and a top-down structure to rule over it. We are misled in a second way by a well-intentioned but dishonest campaign to deny the Islamic State's medieval religious nature. There is a temptation to rehearse this observation that jihadists are modern, secular people with modern political concerns, wearing medieval religious disguises, and make it fit the Islamic State. In fact, much of what the group does looks nonsensical, except in a light of sincere, carefully considered commitments to returning civilization to a 7th century legal environment and ultimately bringing on the apocalypse. I want to make this clear. This is not from me. This is from The Atlantic. To take one example, in September, Sheikh Abdul Mohammed al-Adani, the Islamic State's chief spokesperson, called on Muslims in the Western countries such as France and Canada to find an infidel and smash his head with a rock, to poison him, run him over with a car, or destroy his crops. To Western ears, the biblical-sounding punishments, the stoning, the crop destruction, juxtaposed strangely with his more modern-sounding call to vehicular homicide, seem strange, as if to show that he could terrorize by imagery alone. Adani also referred to Secretary of State John Kerry as an uncircumcised geezer. But Adani was not merely talking trash. His speech is laced with theological and legal discussion. His exhortation to attack crops directly echoes orders from Muhammad to leave well water and crops alone unless the armies of Islam were in a defensive position, in which case Muslims in the lands of infidels should be unmerciful and poison all they can. The reality is the Islamic State is Islamic. In fact, very Islamic.